So everyone, this is Devin Nash. He's a respected esports entrepreneur and tech leader in the gaming space. We're very lucky to have him here, and make sure to wait to do your Q&A till the end, or unless Devin kind of allows you to do so. But Devin, go ahead, take it away.
Do you guys do you want the Zoom call on live, or do you just want me? It's up to you guys.
However, it's up to you. We have clearance to do any and
That'd
all.
be interesting to show.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. And then if you guys don't want to be live, probably turn off your webcam. But I could tell you it's totally fine. Like, think nothing of it.
Totally.
All right.
Totally.
Okay, one sec. Because it should actually, actually this is really good because I think if I just switch to this, if I switch scenes, it should also switch. Yeah, it does. This is very good because I explain a lot of things with like Paint and also with Notepad, so I can do that here. So that's really good. Okay, so we'll change that over in just a second. But yeah, I'll just like get started. So my name's Devin Nash. Thank you for the intro, Gus. Appreciate it. Let's see. I first started doing live streams in 2012, and back then, I played a game that I'm sorry to say is called League of Legends. That's a game that you play if you hate yourself, which at the time I did. Now I'm doing great. I'm just kidding, but it's a very difficult game to play, especially professionally. And because of that, I wanted to make a stream about like positivity. And so I made a stream about being positive in League of Legends. That was literally the theme, and teaching people like how to play the game in like a good mindset. And that was how I got started. And that was so rare in that day and age that it got noticed by Riot Games, which are the people that made League of Legends. I assume that we have a lot of like really high, we have gamers in here. I hope I'm talking to my people. Okay, yeah, they're nodding. Okay, so yeah, League of Legends was basically like the dark side of my soul for multiple years, but I was still trying to make it positive. I got noticed by Riot Games. They started playing games with me, and then through that I got actually invited out and got my first taste of like what esports is, which was at the time was like this like really kind of rinky dink studio that they had, and that was like the best of it. Like people were playing CRTs on games like Street Fighter and like Smash Brothers and everything. And for League of Legends, I started getting really excited about it, and I was like, oh man, like this is a super undeveloped space, and I really want to be a part of this. So I started looking around at teams, and the first team I came across was a team called Team Dignitas. And Team Dignitas had 5 players living in a house in, I think, like Long Beach, like LA, with like no idea of what they were doing. They just like, and I was like, man, these guys could use like a coach, like they could use like player development. And so I found the owner of the team. It was this guy named Michael Odell, as Odie, is like he's like the grandfather of esports. And I said, hey, like, would you be interested and having like kind of like a coach like position, and a person that like goes in and kind of helps with player development and sort of helps these players become like better, not just in terms of like the video game, which I'm not nearly as good at as them, but like in terms of visualization and in terms of how to like eat better, like how to think better and everything. And they were like, well, that sounds really stupid. There's no way we're going to do that. And I said, what if I did it for free? And I flew myself down, and they said that would be amazing. Well, you can do it anytime you want. I said, okay, cool. And so then I was like, and then that was it. I was in. And so I started at Team Dignitas, and like I show up at this house. I'm like dressed up in like a business suit, okay? And I meet these like 5 gamers. This is like Shifter, Kiwi Kid, like anybody that knows like the OG people. I'm a cutie pie like type of people. These guys like hadn't showered in weeks. There's rice that has mold on it, and like this is like not what I expected. Like I have a briefcase. I look like an idiot, okay? And like there's just no expectation. They're just like, okay, like yeah, this guy's here. And I was like, oh man, what am I gonna do with this? And so I dropped down really fast to that level and like became like more of I did like a lot of the visualization stuff, and like I guess you could call me like the first player development coach for esports. Now we have like it's almost like a mandatory position to have an assistant coach that does like something to do with like physical fitness and mental stuff and all that. I got super into that at Dignitas, and then eventually I was like, man, I really want to get paid for this position. And as you're going to find out in this talk, the response, which you'll probably hear a lot if you're going to try to build a career here, is esports makes no money. We can't pay you. And so I was trying to figure that solution out. I said, okay, I realized that if I'm going to make any money off of esports, I've got to go get sponsors myself. And so I started emailing people and was like, hey, are you interested in this? And then eventually what ended up happening was I basically sold enough sponsorships to pay myself a salary. I became the manager of North America for Team Dignitas. And at that point, we had like an LCS team. We were getting into Counter-Strike pretty hard. We had some StarCraft players, which was like my own personal passion. And it was getting kind of exciting. And we were playing in this league that Riot Games was making. At that point, I was sitting on the couch back in the green room, met a guy named George. George is also known as Hotshot GG. And he was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with this esports team. I need help. and I was like, and he's like, do you want to help like run this team? And I'm like, hell no, there's no universe where I'll do that. And he's like, listen, fly out to come live with like the CLG people for a couple of days, and you'll see that this is something really special. We've got all these people living in a house. They're all competing. And George is like an inspiring person, one of the most inspiring people I know. And so I was like, sure, I'll do it. I came out there. My first day, I think Double Lift was trying to bake 2 pounds of bacon in an oven. He almost set the kitchen on fire. And I was like, I'm hooked. I'm here. I'm in for this. Sure. And I took over as CEO for Kind of Watching Gaming. And then the rest is kind of like, we ran the company from 5 employees at the time at CLG plus players to over 120 players and employees in 2019. And we finally sold the company to Madison Square Garden in 2019. And I trained the next CEO, who was Nick Allen, and then left pretty quickly. And I'll kind of get into like why that is and what happened. But that is basically my history. My goal here in this talk is you've probably heard, especially kind of recently, if you follow the news, that there's kind of a lot of doomer talk around esports. That is to say that some people believe the industry is declining really rapidly. Some people believe there's going to be less opportunity in it. Some people believe it's all Saudi Arabia money. There's some truth to that kind of stuff, but I think there is serious opportunity for anybody that actually wants it. And so we're going to break this talk into a couple of sections. Section number 1 is just going to be kind of like the structure of esports from a team owner so that you understand it. Section number 2 is going to be the absolute best careers that you can get in esports that are realistic. And then section number 3 is going to just be the kind of current ecosystem of esports, and then we'll just open up Q&A. It won't take as long as it sounds like it'll take. And then like we'll have plenty of time for questions and stuff like that. Does that sound cool? All right. So the first section, and I'll switch now to the to like this, so hopefully people can see this. I'll also be just like verbalizing it though, so people can follow along. And that's just going to be like kind of understanding the structure of esports. And there's basically 3 different, I'll get the font up here. There's basically 3 different sections of esports to kind of know and to understand. The first one is the publishers. The second one is the teams. And then the third one is the players. Okay, and we'll go through them each way. And if you guys have been studying for a while, some of this stuff will be new, but I guess from the perspective, or some of the stuff will not be new, but from the perspective of a team owner might still be valuable. So the publishers, the first thing to understand about esports, if you understand anything, is that the publishers control everything. In traditional sports, you have leagues and you have people who have kind of come together, organizations that have come together, the Dallas Cowboys, the Mavericks, and so on, the 49ers, and they've agreed together to kind of like make this conglomerate, produce content, own the entire thing, and like who produces the football doesn't matter, okay? So like the person that makes the football, like that doesn't matter in no one cares. No one can even tell you who makes the football. They don't have like a percentage of the profits or anything. In video games, the person who makes the football is all that matters. They own all the IP rights. They own everything. Oftentimes they own the leagues, and they control everything that the teams and players do. So when I say publishers, who do I mean? For the purpose of this talk, there's really 6 publishers that I want to talk about. Sorry, 6 games, and the corresponding publishers end up being like 3 publishers. In order, these are the most popular games in esports currently, and probably going to be the most popular games for the foreseeable future. League of Legends coming in at number 1. Counter-Strike is number 2. Valorant is a very close second to Counter-Strike right now and may or may not surpass it. There's some arguments about that. Dota 2, which is Valve's game. Fortnite, which is made by Epic Games, and then everything else can be everything from FGC, which is like fighting game community, my personal favorite types of esports, or StarCraft, Rocket League, and stuff like that. I say everything else here because the viewership delta between these games, these 5 top games right here, and everything else is like crazy. It doesn't even come close after this. These are really the games that everybody watches. And if you ever want to know what esports are the most popular, there is a really awesome website called escharts.com that will pull up like all this data and tell you what the prize pools are and where everybody is. And that's just kind of neat to know. So these games are to varying degrees basically completely controlled by the publishers. Riot Games owns LCS and all of the corresponding leagues across the world, and they own VCT and Valorant, and they completely control everything from the publishing to the production to who competes in their tournaments, and they sell franchise spots that people pay for to be a part of those teams. Counter-Strike and the other leagues work a little bit differently. They work in terms of smaller tournaments where you compete and then you kind of rank up into what's called majors. And then in the majors, you play for like bigger prizes. And there are several different production crews that control these different areas, including ESL, which is really famous, and Blast. Lately, Blast has really come on the scene after Epic Games partnered with them. And at the current moment, FNCS, which is the Fortnite League, basically is almost completely published by Blast. There are some smaller Fortnite stuff, but that's kind of like the main thing that's going on in esports. And then if you guys have heard about the international, that's the like huge prize pool, 10, 15 million dollar like tournament that that Valve puts on. That's one of the biggest esports of the year. So publishers basically run everything and control everything. Some are very involved, like we talked about with Riot, and some are like much less involved. And then you have the teams. Teams are more kind of appropriately named organizations because one esports organization usually controls many teams. So at the height of Counter Logic Gaming, we had an Overwatch team, two Counter-Strike teams, including a team of all girls, an LCS team, an LCS Academy team, several individual Super Smash Bros. Players because I just like that esport, some StarCraft players, and like a bunch of other stuff. I'm probably leaving some out, and they're gonna get mad at me. But that was we had a Call of Duty team for a while. We had a Halo team that got stolen by another esports team because they offered double the salary, which you'll see a lot. It's a pretty wild west, but yeah. So teams are basically paid by agreements with the publishers. So Riot provides a stipend for everybody that has an LCS team. They're also paid by sponsorships. Some people tend to think that teams make money off of prize winnings, but this is actually not true for 2 reasons. One is that 95% of the prize winnings that go from any organization end up going to the players, and prize winnings, even so, are not actually sufficient enough to run a team anyway. So it's actually really expensive to run a team. You're paying for all of the travel. You're flying people around constantly. You're paying for all of your employees. You're paying for all of your overhead. You're paying for those people usually to live full time these days in apartments. But back in the day, we had this. I don't think I've ever told this story before. So we had this basic compound in Arcadia in Los Angeles. It was owned by this like Chinese conglomerate guy, this super crazy business dude. And he was charging us, like, this is like a crazy amount of space. It was like 3 full-blown houses, 2 like side houses. We ended up like housing like 40 or 50 people in this place, and it cost us $5,000 a month because this dude was just a fan of the team from China. It turns out that CLG had like a huge like fan base in China because they watched older games, so they're like huge fans of Hotshot GG and stuff. So we got super lucky on that. But everything is like really ragtag with the teams. Even like today, it's just feast or famine. It's whatever you can get. And the thing to understand about what keeps the teams so hungry for capital is player salaries. So there are very few players, actually like pro players, and we're going to get to that section here. In gaming, there's like actually very few. Players are paid by the team. They only work for one organization. And the largest players do have individual sponsorships, but pretty much the money you make as a player these days is almost exclusively from the team paying you a salary. That's unlike traditional sports, where in traditional sports, about half of the money that a player gets paid is from individual sponsorships, and about half is from team salary. And then there's other like royalties, there's TV deals and everything like that. The thing is, and this is something I don't hear a lot of people talk about with esports, if a player is individually sponsored by somebody, that oftentimes conflicts with a team level sponsorship. So for example, if there's a keyboard like Logitech that sponsors a team, and then a player wants an individual sponsorship from SteelSeries, that kind of thing creates it creates a problem where the there's often these things called exclusivity agreements in these contracts. Who are you going to promote? Like, are you going to promote Logitech or their competitor? And so oftentimes organizations try to stop players from having individual sponsorships. Okay, so despite that though, players as of like 2000, I'd say 18-ish, when venture capital started to come into esports a lot, started to make an insane amount of money. I was talking about this stat actually on my broadcast today, where when I first came into esports, my highest paid players who had like hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, were super popular, they might see like a salary of like 70 to 80K a year. So that's in like 2015-ish. So 70, 80K a year. By 2018 or 2019, I was paying those same players about $700,000 or $800,000 a year. And 2 years after that, in like 2020, those numbers looked like $1 to $3 million a year. Now, those numbers might sound really high to you for gaming, or they might sound really low to you if you compare them to sports. But in comparison to the sponsorships we were getting at a team level, I could probably get one sponsor at CLG for like maybe $200,000, maybe $300,000 a year if I was lucky. So think about that, okay? So for one team, I've got 5 players, and I'm paying them like, let's say, an average of $1 million each. And then for one sponsor, like a Lexus or like a Red Bull or something, I'm getting like $250,000, $300,000. Like the economics just made no sense, okay? But this is getting propped up because at the time, everybody kind of thinks that esports is the next sports. And so everybody is just throwing money into this. Venture capital is throwing money into this like crazy. And that goes on as the league's franchise. Venture capital basically donates enough money, gives enough money, it really was kind of a donation because they didn't get anything back, into these esports teams individually, us included at Counterlogic Gaming. Our VC equivalent was Madison Square Garden. We went with a far more traditional buyer. And the reason we did that was because at the time they owned the Knicks and the Rangers. We thought that we would get a lot of sales opportunities and sponsorship opportunities off of them. And we thought that they would help us a lot on that side with business logistics when we were very young executives, didn't really know what we were doing. When they basically paid for us to enter the LCS, those costs went around like 10 to 15 million per slot, and everybody else like TSM or Cloud9 had their own VCs that would pay in some equivalent number to get them into the league, and there we were. So that all kind of lasted until COVID hit, and when COVID hit, you have to understand that for years and years, there'd been this storyline going where we were just kind of waiting for people like you, like your audience of 20 to like 34-year-old gamer type people to be watching and engaging with this content. Everybody was saying, oh, like it's not going to be too long until all of these people, these millions of people that want to watch this filter in. There, you had Bobby Kotick at the time telling everybody that literally he was going to fill stadiums full of people to watch Overwatch. And some of us knew that this was kind of overblown, but and the team owners could have told you that, but no, like the bubble, living in the bubble, no one knew like how big the bubble was. Okay, and the bubble was big. The bubble was everything. The bubble was every team. The bubble was like the only people that got out alive, right, were the publishers, because the publishers were never trying to monetize esports. They were never trying to make money. Like League of Legends was never trying to make money off of the LCS. They make money off of skin transactions, right? A single sale of like Star Guardian Lux or something like that is going to outsell and make more money than all of the team's revenue combined for the year. Like, it's just crazy how the billions of dollars that these companies are producing. And they just basically put money into the LCS as a marketing arm just to get more people interested in their game. I literally had the director at Riot tell me to my face that esports is just a line item for marketing for them. Like that's their mentality, right? And who can blame them, because at the same time, Bobby Kotick over at Activision is kind of convincing like NFL people to get into the space. He's thinking the same thing. They just want to have more players play Overwatch and more people to buy skins. So that leaves us with a huge explosion. Basically, all of the VCs kind of simultaneously figure out that this is not something that is going to have the same viewership as expected. It's not going to generate a ton of viewership. It's not going to make billions and billions of dollars. It's not going to fill stadiums with people. And all the VCs, like from the course of like 2021-ish to 2023, just drop out. That's it. Boom. Whole industry explodes. Some teams are lucky and they like manage to sell out and kind of escape in time. Other teams are not so lucky, like mine, CLG, which basically got dismantled by Madison Square Garden and sold for parts in 2023, and literally doesn't even have a website anymore. If you try to go find CLG as a website, you will not be there. I'm like a dinosaur. I'm like the last of the Mohicans or something. It's over. like some teams just got obliterated, and we were like a household name, like worldwide household name, but just bleeding too much capital and so on it goes. Okay, so that said, you're like, wow, I'm really interested in working in this industry now. Like the way that you described that, right? Like what the heck? And that's kind of like leads us to like the next section, which is like, okay, if you really are passionate about gaming and if you are really interested in this, what now? Okay. And there are several, just in running a team and all of the mistakes that I made, which are millions and millions of dollars of mistakes, I have with high confidence the ability to tell you what the most useful positions are within gaming and within esports that are actually realistic for you to pursue as a student as you are right now. Every single one of you could still pursue a career in gaming and could still pursue a career in esports, but you have to be smart about the soft and hard skills that you learn. So we're going to go through a list, starting, what do you want to start from worst to best or best to worst? Depends on how much fun we want to have.
Maybe let's do worst.
Worst first. Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. That'll surprise a lot of people. Okay. Does anyone want to take a guess at what the worst job within the esports, like the least likely for you to succeed job is within the esports kind of sector and the gaming sector? They can chat it too if you want. I'll read the chat here. I'll give it a minute.
Public relations or HR?
Public relations or HR. That's definitely one of the most annoying ones. But yeah, it's a good guess. People are saying, let's see what chat says. They're saying player. Okay. I wonder if anybody knows it. All right.
Sponsorships?
Sponsorships are good guess. Good guess. Team owner, talent management. Okay. The worst position in esports or gaming at all to be successful in, like to have a chance to be successful, is to be a streamer or content creator. Straight up. Okay. And yep.
Wow.
It is 100%. Let me tell you why. Okay. So every single person that clicks the start streaming button has a 1 in 15,000 chance of ever making minimum wage. That's how rare it is to make any sort of money off of broadcasting. Content creation is insanely difficult. It is super duper hard. It looks really easy for people that are doing it all the time, but it is super, super difficult. Content creation is so if you look at like the number one job that people want in the United States right now, it's YouTuber. But despite that, the vast majority of people will never be able to create content at any kind of level because the amount of consistency and the amount of work that you have to produce is a huge amount. But the kind of cool thing about content creation is that despite this number, I always like to tell a story. If anybody ever played Pokemon, there is a Pokemon you can get that has a 1% chance of you finding it. You have to fish for it. And if you fish for it, you have a 1%, you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting the Pokemon. Okay? If you keep fishing, you will get it. Eventually, statistically, you will get it. I also love playing a game called Path of Exile, where everything is basically RNG based, and like in Path of Exile, I might have like a 1 in 150 chance of getting something. If I roll it enough and if I spend enough currency and enough time doing it, I will get that item. Okay? And content creation works the same way. If you make enough videos, if you iterate on it, if you keep trying, you will succeed at it. But it is by far the hardest thing on this list to actually do for a realistic job in esports. All right, next up is the one that most of my chat guessed, and that's professional player. The second most hardest thing to go with. So why is this so hard? Few reasons. First of all, if you want, like, let's say you want to get good at League of Legends. Oh boy. You've got a solo queue on that game like 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the people that solo queue that much and train that much on that game, a lot of the time they aren't even good. like it would like I was having this talk the other day. Challenger queue is like 200 people. So this is the best of the best League of Legends players. But out of that number, there's lots of duplicate accounts, like call it like maybe 50 to 75 real people within the very best highest tier of League of Legends. And then a lot of those people are content creators. And if you're a content creator, you make a lot more money than professional players most of the time, and your life is a lot less stressful. For a pro player, your average day is you wake up around like 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. You scrim, so you practice with your team until about like 8 or 9, and then you solo queue the rest of the time till like 3 or 4 in the morning every single day until Saturday and Sunday come along, in which case you're competing. So that's your schedule as a pro player. The top like 0.0001% of people become professional players. You have to love a game so much. You have to love a game so much to play at a professional level. Okay, and then from here, it becomes a little bit more realistic. So clocking in at number 4 is a coach or an analyst. So at this point, this is very hard because you really need to understand the game. But pretty much everybody can become a coach or an analyst. You need to create a lot of content, and you need to compete with the real problem, and the reason why this job in particular in esports is so hard is because you have to compete with pro players who are coming off of their pro career and don't know what else to do, so they become coaches. But despite that, it's a very possible job to work on, and I can kind of expand on it if there's more questions on it later. And now I think this top 4, I think I've got 4 more. Yeah, so this is misnumbered, but whatever, we'll just keep going. We're going to go for 0. So coming in at number 3. At this point, these are jobs I think actually anybody can get, and I think a lot of these jobs will probably surprise you. So number 3 is commentator and caster. Almost nobody actually thinks about this when they start thinking about esports. If I were to try to get into esports today, this is the job I would go for. Let me tell you why. The first way that you start becoming a commentator and caster is you start making your own content. So you start like analyzing stuff, you start doing like shoutcasting on your own videos, you start doing like YouTube, and there's actually really small amount of demand for these jobs, but it's super easy to get noticed. So if you go to like a small event, like a Frostbite or like one of those like smaller like events, and you want to start doing shoutcasting for it, it's really easy to get in touch with all of the team owners. It's really easy to get in touch with like all of the bigger organizations, all the sponsors there, and start to kind of scale your career. A lot of my friends came up through esports in this way. One of my heroes, my personal heroes, is a guy named Day9. Came up almost exclusively through casting, but I also know a lot of people like Riot Freak, a lot of people that came up through casting. So casting is really high paid also. You can expect to make like upwards of like $400K a year when you're employed by publishers. It's also, you can double as an analyst or coach. If I can spell those words. And you can do speaking engagements and all kinds of cool stuff. So it's actually pretty underrated and pretty easy to get into. Coming in at number 2 is, I think, the most realistic position, and it's another good starter position, and that's community management or project management, like kind of working for publishers. So a couple of cool things with this and a couple of bad things. Number one, it's probably the most common role, but it has a low experience threshold, meaning that like you don't really need to know anything to get into it. Basically, anybody can be a community manager, and you can learn a lot by getting into these organizations and then move around, but it is hard to get because there's a lot of demand. Still, I think that if you're trying for like an entry-level position at a company, starting as a community manager is a good bet. And if you've worked in like running a forum or like you've even like, dude, like you'd be surprised what on resumes you can get. If you like run a guild, I've seen people like submit, I've literally seen people submit resumes where they're like, oh yeah, I ran like a 500 person guild on like World of Warcraft. And then they're like, cool, like that's actually experience. Like you can be a community manager, right? Because if you've run a 500 person guild on World of Warcraft, you can deal with a bunch of angry people on a forum. Trust me. That's like something you could do. So this is like a pretty highly realistic position. Next up at number 1, there's a number 0. I'm going to have you guys guess it. The next one up, and this is my personal favorite as well as the current position I'm in, and that's agents and lawyers. And I think that these are some of the best roles within esports and gaming for a few reasons. The first one is that every single level needs these people. Whether you are a player, whether you are a team, and whether you are a publisher, you need agents and lawyers. So the agents are people that individually represent esports players or esports organizations. They negotiate salaries. They sometimes protect players from predatory contracts. They negotiate on behalf of players who may be too timid or don't want to deal with team owners. Agents were my nightmare as a team owner, and now as an agent myself, I am the nightmare for lots of people. So they are needed at every single level. Becoming a lawyer obviously has a lot of work involved in it, but if you do manage to go towards law anyway, one of the crazy things you can do is literally just, there's a lot of people that have done this. You can actually just tag yourself an esports lawyer, and then you just become an esports lawyer. So like if you are trained in entertainment law, or that's kind of your focus in law, you can literally just kind of brand yourself that way, and then it becomes so easy to get these clients that people just sort of go to you, and like esports is like very highly nepotist. So like if you start in esports and you get a job, you're very likely to stay within the ecosystem, getting bounced around to teams all the time. So if you literally all you need is like one client, and then you can just start crushing it and getting like a ton of clients. And so it's pretty easy. There's still to this day, even in 2024, a lack of representation for players. There's just not enough agents and not enough lawyers to go around. There are agents and lawyers everywhere, but it started to get kind of saturated, and you had like WME and CAA and some of these really big agencies start looking at esports when the VC money was coming in. But since the bubble popped, like all those people pieced out, and so there's just endless opportunity here, and there's a lot. There's like a lot of stuff that can be done there. Okay, and then finally, the number 1 role. Does anybody want to guess? Tier 0. What is the absolute best role to get into in esports or gaming? We'll see if anybody gets it.
Ownership, general manager, or
CEO.
CEO.
Yeah. Some people are saying you don't. It's a lie. There is no game publisher.
There's no game developer or publisher going on here, right?
A good guess. It's a good guess. Marketing is a good guess. Team chef.
Got it.
This is a role that everybody can realistically achieve at a very low level, very low entry level. I haven't seen a single person get it yet. Intern, you said?
Yep, intern.
That might be one of the worst roles. We're going in reverse.
Wait, intern is the worst role?
Yeah, definitely
What?
definitely can be. They're gonna make you work endlessly. You don't get paid for it.
Oh my
House
god.
cleaner.
You want to get hazed as hard as possible? That's the intern shift.
Ah.
Chef. All right, nobody. Don't worry, no one in my chat got it either. Not a single person. Yeah. Okay.
God.
All right. The number 1 role within esports to get, and in general, I think going forward, is a sales role or business development. Okay, and I will explain why. If you can do sales, and let me define what sales is first, okay? Because it sounds like a boring answer. I gotta see the reaction to what people are saying. Sales, okay, yeah, it's sales. It's 100% sales, okay? Why? What is sales? The sales is two things. Number one, it's the ability to generate lists of people who are interested in buying something from you. And number two, it's the ability to convince those people to buy that thing. If you have this skill, and it is a hard skill, it's not a soft skill, meaning that like it's not like improv or talking to people. Sales is like mathematics. You can learn sales, you can learn how to do it. If you can do sales, you can not only fit into every single one of these other roles, you can also dominate at those roles. There are no good team owners who are not good salespeople. And there are no good people in any of these roles who are not good salespeople. You have to be a good salesperson to do any of this. And this is something you can learn on YouTube. This is something you can learn in college. This is something you can learn by practicing. Sales is the most important thing to be able to do. If you can sell sponsorships, you will instantaneously be able to work at any esports organization you want if you can prove it. You could go to TSM tomorrow. You could go to FaZe tomorrow and be like, here's my repertoire. Here's the number of deals I've closed in this space. And they'll be like, welcome aboard. It is the only position that can allow you to do that. But sales is really hard and it's really rare. And a lot of people within esports today still just do not have any experience in sales. Like, the salespeople, even in the very best ecosystem that esports was in like the 2018, 2019-ish range of time, there was nobody good at sales, really. The reason why Cloud9 is such a the people that know what Cloud9 is, right? Like very popular team across North America, nodding their heads, yeah. The reason why Cloud9 is such a successful team, Jack, the owner of Cloud9, was the head of sales for Crunchyroll. If you look at any of the people that are running like kind of semi-successful teams in this day and age, they were all sales background, universally, with almost no exceptions. So it might surprise people to learn that like sales is pretty much one of the most important roles that you can do in esports, and it's also one of the very few roles that I think is genuinely insulated from the AI revolution that's coming. Like insulated in the sense that like if sales goes, then kind of like we're all going, you know. And so I think it's a skill that is absolutely mandatory. Like if you are serious about your career and you like learn the hard skill of sales, it's the best advice I can give you. It's the most, it's the thing that has carried me the most through everything. When I was like 20 years old, I was working in a call center for bank security software, dialing 50 to 60 phone calls a day, trying to ask people at C-level if they wanted to buy bank security software, calling Wells Fargo, calling Chase Bank, calling everybody I could get a hold of, credit unions. It was the best experience I've ever gotten. I started doing that again at CounterLogic Gaming, sending emails, calling people. And today, all of the revenue that I've generated off my current business, which is an agency, is all sales driven. It's the most important thing you can do. Super, super important. Warm calls or cold calls, everything. We can get more into sales if people are interested in it. Before we open up to kind of like questions and stuff, I just want to quickly kind of go over what the current ecosystem of is esports is and what you can kind of expect. This will go pretty fast. It is true that the gaming industry is contracting. It is true that you're seeing layoffs within gaming. I want people here to be careful when you read articles and you read things like, oh, Twitch is declining as a platform. There are less viewers on Twitch than there was 2 years ago. Or there are more YouTube creators than there was 2 years ago. Or there are several esports teams that have shut down. There's less funding than there was 3 years ago. Whatever you hear that's like that doomer stuff. That macroscopic view of the world doesn't necessarily mean and doesn't actually really mean in reality that you don't have an opportunity there. This is something really important that I've learned in dealing with like a lot of stats, is that I've literally had content creators turn away from becoming Twitch streamers or because somebody tells them, oh, Twitch viewership, was down 7% last year. The website is dying. And yet there are tens of thousands of creators at that instance making full-time income off of the platform, right? So even if I tell you that gaming and esports is contracting, that if it is your passion, it should not deter you, because you can still make it work if you're more dedicated and you're literally if you're just more dedicated than other people. Right. So it is true that gaming is contracting. It is also true that a lot of the current money that is flowing into esports is from the Middle East. And the reason that is happening is because the Middle East is on a marketing campaign to try to get 20 to 35 year old males and females to think that like Dubai is like the coolest place on earth. I don't think it's the coolest place on earth. I think like there's other places that are pretty cool, but they think so. So they're willing to put millions of dollars in marketing in to try to convince you of that, to get you to live there, to get you to put your businesses there, and to get you. And so they see esports as a vertical to that goal. It's basically a marketing arm, and that is going to persist. At this point, Saudi Arabia owns, I think, 100% of ESL. They have huge investments in a lot of the publishers, and the people that in Saudi Arabia that are not invested in it, those investments come from China. China is invested in Tencent, which owns Riot Games, owns many of the major titles and games. Now, I don't think that just because the money coming into esports these days from China and Saudi Arabia inherently makes it bad. I also don't. I think if anything, it's like kind of going to prop up the industry for a while it finds its footing. But you might just have to change your expectations of like, okay, if I'm coming into esports because I believe this is a ecosystem where stadiums full of people every weekday are going to show up like they would for like a Dallas Cowboys match or like a 49ers match, I just don't think, or a Lakers match, right? I think that ship has sailed for sure, but a realistic position in a growing space that's decently funded is going to become possible by the time you are all looking for careers and graduating, because what always happens with these bubbles is the bubble explodes. Now we're in the decline. And what will happen is that teams will start to realize, and organizations will start to realize, we have to become more realistic about our ecosystem. We have to make this stuff make sense. And player salaries will start to normalize. Salaries in general will start to normalize. Expenses and operating expenses will start to normalize. And some of the grifters will get out in the space for some of these teams to succeed. We're already kind of seeing this in the fighting game community, which has always kind of been insulated from this because the salaries are like more reasonable and the players have lower expectations. That has to happen a little bit more with like the League of Legends and like CSGO and like some of the big ones. But as that sort of starts to happen, it will become more realistic to get into these places and get jobs at these places. So you shouldn't be discouraged by the current ecosystem. And just sorry, this is kind of like my style. I kind of have to say this, but it's like, you really shouldn't be discouraged by anything that anybody tells you. If you're dedicated enough, if you're fast enough and you want to learn enough and you're hungry enough, you will get anything you want in this world. And you just have to work for it. So that's always been my kind of mentality on things. I don't like the idea of like, despite the fact that I'm like a stats guy, you can go onto my YouTube and I talk all the time about macro stuff and like what is happening with all the platforms and everything. Those are interesting thought experiments, but ultimately when it comes down to your individual action and what will make you succeed, that is going to be the hard and soft skills that you carry out of college into your career. And that's why I'm telling you that stuff like sales and stuff like knowing those kind of like objective hard skills is so important, because carrying that out more than anything, more than your degree, more than anything else, will actually be what matters when people evaluate your potential in a career, or when you want to be an entrepreneur and do something yourself. I know of no better skill to carry with me than sales. So that's why that's why I iterated that was like one of the most important things. But ultimately, if you want to actually get something out of this career, don't listen to anybody saying like, oh, like the industry is over. There are still tens of thousands of people that show up for IEMs. There's still tens of thousands of people that show up every single day at some kind of tournament. There's huge popularity and like gaming. If you just looked at Steam just hit an all-time player count. Gaming is going nowhere. There will be a reduction in jobs because of AI and because of like that being replaced and that kind of thing. But if you're good with the type of skills that I'm talking about, like, you will still succeed. That's kind of it. so I can go into like questions and stuff for as much as y'all want, and I can literally hang out until as long as you guys want for like questions and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. That was really good. I appreciate that. For everyone that's in here, you're feel free to jump in. You guys should have a bunch of questions to ask.
And I can answer questions from chat,
Right.
and I can also answer questions that are like Mike. Some of you may not want to talk. I totally respect that too. And so whatever you want to do.
Yeah, sweet. You guys can put it in the chat for sure.
Oh, dude, people raise their hands. I am not used to this,
Yeah.
man. That's
No, you guys don't need to raise your hand. Just go ahead and jump in.
All right. Oh, sweet. Okay. Well, I was gonna ask, like, do you think there's a culture problem within the esports space? Like, instead of a whole thing when it kind of gets like big enough where like they try to corporatize and whatnot, where let's say you go from small streamer and then suddenly it moves up to a whole more corporatized area, and then suddenly it starts being a brand over a person, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to word this properly because I don't know. I see some teams kind of have that problem.
That's a really good question. I do think so, yeah. I think the good news is that culture problem is slowly fading away. So you saw that a lot more when teams were trying to find out their identity, and a really good example of this is like FaZe Clan. Okay, so FaZe Clan started off with a really authentic identity that people fell in love with. They had their Call of Duty montages. They were like really good at FPS. They're just like a bunch of gamers trying to kind of like make good content. And then over time, they started, the ego kind of kicked in, and they started like hanging out with celebrities. They started thinking like the money came from everywhere. They started like, they changed their whole system up, and they lost what originally fans actually valued them for, and as a result their company plummeted, right? Like they just got way ahead of who they thought they were, and that's a culture problem. That's like a problem of like esports not knowing what it is, right? Like I'm so glad you asked this question, because like why I fell in love with esports is I remember the moment I fell in love with esports, right? Is like I was sitting in the front row watching like two people play Smash at a tournament. I don't even remember what the tournament was. I do remember that I had to sleep in a bathtub with like 4 other people in the hotel room, because that's all we could afford at the time. And like I loved gaming so much because when you saw that guy fly off the screen and it said game, like everybody just like, yeah, let's go! Like everyone's just so freaking like, that's the culture of esports. That's the energy of esports. That like it was the same type of feeling in 2015 at Madison Square Garden when our team 3-0'd TSM. We were the underdogs. Nobody thought we were going to win. We 3-0'd them in front of 18,000 people. We all just ran out on stage and just lost our minds, like confetti dropping, and like you just have that roar of the crowd. Like that passion, that storyline is the culture of esports. And yeah, we did lose sight of that in favor of franchising, in favor of like money, in favor of like selling tickets and things like that. People like Body Kotick, who didn't get, the CEO of Activision, who couldn't give 2 shits about esports ever, just was looking to monetize Overwatch, looking to get as much money as possible, came in and started changing that cultural narrative. But I think as the money dried up, it's actually a blessing in disguise for the people who are truly passionate about gaming, because those people, those vultures, really left and now have paved the road for people who really actually love the games to come back in and make something of it. And so like your question is so good. I feel like yes, there has been a culture problem with esports, and it's still there. There's still some grifting. There's still like some scammers. There's crypto pump and dump. There's all that stuff. But I'm seeing like someone is polishing the gem, and underneath it is the true passion of gamers coming back and being like, no, like we actually want to make something of this. We love the gaming. We love what it is, and that culture is coming back. And over the course of the next couple of years and few years, you're going to see more of that and less of like the predatory stuff. Thank you for that question. It's super awesome.
It's the Daigo Perry for me that I remember most from the old Evo.
For sure. Yeah, Evo is crazy, man. It's got that feel. Like if you guys ever want to, if you guys ever want to feel esports, you got to go to a fighting game tournament, because like it's a different, like in franchise, like they set you up in these like assigned chairs. You have like a seat. You're like removed from it. You're like watching a TV. It's whatever. At FGC, you like literally just get to sit like right next to the players. They're all there. You see them jump up and down when they're winning. Like everybody just loses their mind. It's so good. It's so good. It's a different ecosystem. Let's see. Do you think that esports, this is from Gus, do you think that esports will ever get to a level where games are public and can be played like basketball or football at any level, and events are owned by schools or event organizations and not publishers? We've talked about this in class and how it could be a path towards esports and longevity. This is a super good question. The collegiate scene of esports is really interesting. And I have thought about collegiate a lot. When I worked, there was I took like it's not like a job, but I took like I guess contract work, whatever, speaking engagements, where I was hired by Twitch for a while to go all around the country and talk to universities about esports. And I saw some pretty cool stuff in that journey. Sometimes that took me all the way out to like Missouri, like and like even there was like people building arenas and passion for it. So I think that collegiate is like low key one of the verticals that esports could actually like thrive and live through. But I think that what we're lacking in collegiate right now is some kind of unifying body or force. The publishers don't want to do it. Like they tried, like Riot Games had that like collegiate program for a little while, but it didn't really gain any kind of like meaningful viewership, like I think it should have. And so I think it's going to take some kind of like grassroots movement to get a bunch of colleges together and start competing and get people interested. That I think has some really interesting implications for the future of esports. And for that reason, I also think that collegiate, by virtue of how universities are set up, can probably manage operating expenses a lot better than traditional organizations and teams can. You don't have to pay players as much is one. But beyond that, like because you are getting supported by the school can do so much more work on the back end to support with like facilities. You already have dorms for people to live in. So a lot of the operating expenses go down. If you can find the viewership, then you can kind of get that off of the floor. And there's a lot of really cool people that are working on collegiate right now. And some of them I'm talking about, I'm talking to right now. As for like, can it ever be, played like collegiate sports is such like traditional sports is such a massive field, because anybody that wants to go pro in the NBA or NFL, almost anybody basically has to get drafted up through collegiate, and there's like an actual audience to watch it. What's missing right now from collegiate is the audience for esports. Does it ever get as big as collegiate traditional sports? Probably not. But can it fit into a super solid niche where it has a good amount of viewership and it's like realistic to run, and it serves as a great recruiting arm for universities? I know for a fact that a lot of universities have successfully recruited people to go because they've had superior gaming programs. I do think that's a very realistic path for esports, and I'm like really excited to see like where collegiate goes in the future. Let's see. Jacob asks, how will you see esports 10 years later in the future if it's going to continue? Even then, will there be issues based on what you discussed? Very disappointing answer. I can't answer anything 10 years from now. The world is so crazy right now that in 10 years, we might be motes of light thinking at each other. Like, shit is going to get really, do you know how crazy shit's going to get? It's going to get so crazy. I have to like hold back because I didn't with the advancements in AI, with the advancements in medical research, like this is by far the most interesting time to be alive. It's just such a crazy time, but it is impossible to like, I don't even know if there is going to be an esports in 10 years. I don't even know if there's going to be computers. Like the way that we interact and think about the world will be so meaningfully different in 10 years. It's really hard to say. I can say that for like the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, I think esports will follow the trajectory that I was talking about, which is like, we'll see the venture capital kind of drain out drain the swamp, if you will, and then rising from that will be new growth and new life. It will feel like a much more authentic industry, and it will feel like the people that are there because they care to be there. Because a lot of the kind of carry on hawks kind of got out when they realized the money wasn't there. And I'm looking forward to that time period. So short term, like esports, very exciting. Long term, we might all be ruled by automations made by Sam Altman. Who knows? Exactly. Yeah, we'll see.
Dyson Sphere by the next 30 to 50 years because of AI.
30 to 50 years is crazy, man. Like we're gonna be energy beings in 30 to 50 years. It's gonna get really crazy. This is where Gus is like, I can't invite this guy back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask another question. How might unions impact in esports as a whole? Like, you know how like there's players associations for other major leagues, is like, would integrating that be possible, and how would that affect the sort of esports landscape with the union?
It's a phenomenal question. I have dealt a lot with esports unions, and we've tried.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was like, I was kind of surprised that there was some that existed.
Oh yeah, sure. Like the Players Association for so a little bit of history here is kind of interesting. Riot Games, for a long time on the LCS side, basically called all of the shots for teams and players, and they did so to such an extent that players wanted more rights and wanted more power when they were dealing with Riot Games. So they came up with a couple of acronyms and organizations that were actually independently run for a while. One was called the PEA, which was like the Player Something Association. And there was also like the Players Association. One of my friends, Darshan, also known as Zion Spartan, was a top laner for CLG. He was the player representative of that for a while. They never make too much progress, and everybody is too scared to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why it's a problem. What ends up happening is this. Let's say you have like 3 or 4 or 5 teams that want to get something done. Actually, let me tell you a real story, okay? This is in Korea. We had that people on my broadcast that I've never told this story live, and I've never told it because probably I'm gonna get a couple emails after I tell this story. But let's go. It's a special time. We're talking to the University of Hawaii. Let's go. All right. So, I was in Korea at the time with Cloud9 and TSM. We were practicing against Korean teams because they are much better than us. And so you would go to Korea for like 6-month binges to go practice with these guys. And Riot was going to fly our players from Korea to France for Worlds 2000. What was guys in chat? What was the Worlds that we had in France that CLG went to? Help me out. They'll give me the year. But yeah, it was one of those years. Might have been 2016 or something like that. So they're going to fly us to Worlds. And they booked the flights because publishers, again, do everything. Okay. They booked our flights over certain third world countries that had like missile trajectories on like public aircraft. Okay, it's like substantially more dangerous to fly over these countries. They're saying it's 2015, so yeah, 2015 in Europe.
You're flying around demilitarized zone.
Yeah, they're flying us around like super dangerous places, and I was like, hey guys, how about you just pay $500 more per ticket and we don't fly over fucking Syria? And they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. We like to save money. And I was like, okay. And so I went to like Cloud9 and I went to like TSM and I'm like, hey, this is like a huge problem. And we all together, like Team Liquid, all of us simultaneously got together and petitioned Riot to finally change these flights, which they ended up doing. And in that story is the lesson here, and is why player associations and unions have such a hard time. What publishers will do is they will hear the complaints of a single team, they'll push that team aside, and they'll be like, yeah, so I guess you just don't want any flights ever again, huh? Like you just don't ever want any flights? That's fine. You can pay for all your own flights. Yeah, that's great. And they'll tell the one team that, and that one team will break, and then all the other teams will break, and then everybody just agrees to whatever Riot does. So whenever there's been like
dirty.
a player union or like a player association, what they do is they individually go to the players, they bully those guys out or the teams, and then somebody cracks, and then the whole organization falls apart, because ultimately you're only as strong as your weakest link. And that's how publishers have out-negotiated those. Like, publishers don't want player unions, no matter what they tell you, right? Like, they're not going to want...
Sounds like union busting.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Yeah, it's literally that. It's literally that. But like it's not to their benefit, because like if we actually get together and organize as a team and like, hey, we all want like 40% more salaries because we're literally like living under the table while these guys are like gorging like, oh, Star Guardian Lux, Cupcake Lulu, like skins, like billions of dollars, and we're like, please, just a pittance. Like, it's not to their benefit, right? Like, what's that?
There's one skin that's for, I think, Ari, the freaking that one
$500 at the up end. Yeah.
Oh, $500.
Yeah. And it's probably sold millions and millions of dollars. Like, I'd love to see the S1 for that. It's crazy, but yeah, that's just how it is. So, as much as I actually think that player
skin.
What's that?
2 of my friends bought that damn skin.
There it is. It's a pretty cool skin. Let's be real. Yeah, and I've spent plenty of money. And like it's just like the publishers do act as union busters in this case, and it's because they don't want those organizations to. And like the sad thing is, like, in this day and age, they've basically won the battle. Like, I don't think like a players association is ever going to have any real legs. Like against something like Riot Games or anything like this, because again, like, they own everything. They own the IP. They own everything. So like, what are you going to do? But it's a good question. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And could sales and business be kind of okay? I was going to ask, because it's kind of considered like, because when it's the individual that makes the part that's part of the esports, what's it called, is that usually they have to be the sales one. Could it be sort of like doing mic work for promoting a fight, or even for like pro wrestling ones where they got to promote the match type of thing? You got to make the other guy look good type of thing and whatnot.
Can you elaborate more?
What I mean is that usually when it becomes to sales and business, it's like you said, like, what is it? You're trying to sell something type of thing. Like, you got to sell people why they should like you type of thing, like why they want to see you. So is it like as in terms of like skills, is like kind of like that type of thing?
I think that for sales, at least at the team level or the publisher level, you're really selling a lot more B2B. So you're really trying to convince businesses to give you money, right? And like what you're talking about, I think more would fulfill the role of like a content creator within
at least from streamer perspective.
Yeah, which we're also sorely lacking as well, because like we need more people that can tell good stories. Like I would kind of argue that the entire reason why esports never took off to the level of like the NFL and the NBA is because of a lack of investment in that kind of storytelling. If we had gotten people to care about the players to the level that they care about Tom Brady, then they would have, or LeBron, then we would have had that kind of success. But again, the publishers didn't have an incentive to invest that. And you have to keep in mind, you're talking to a team owner. So of course I'm going to demonize the team owners. Like or I'm going to demonize the publishers. If you're talking to a publisher, they're going to demonize the team owners. It's all our fault because we're super greedy. We convinced the VCs to invest all of their money here. And if you talk to the players, they say it's all the team owners' fault. So probably it is all my fault too. They're probably both true. So just keep in mind my bias here, you know.
I mean, streaming would be considered what, the public broadcasting for the internet, basically?
Streaming in an esports sense would be considered, the broadcasting rights, and at a time, in the same way that like the NFL sells their broadcasting rights to something like NBC or something like that. But in this day and age, broadcasting rights aren't worth that much. So if you recall, there were these deals where I believe YouTube offered like, what was it, guys? Like it was like several $1 billion for the rights to stream Overwatch, right? And then Twitch had a couple of things like that as well. Everybody kind of quickly realized that stuff wasn't worth anything, and now broadcasting rights are kind of a thing of the past. Like nobody's gonna pay for Overwatch League because there isn't an Overwatch League. But if there was, they wouldn't pay for it. Yeah. What's that?
They pump and dump, huh?
Yeah, you see a lot of that across esports. Absolutely, for sure. Let's see here. Being in Hawaii, our biggest esports disadvantage is ping and jobs. What is your ping to like North American servers?
Depends. Usually it can be anywhere from 70 to 135.
That's doable. I mean, like, okay, like you're talking to a guy who like I moved in large part to Dallas, Texas. My ping to the Path of Exile servers is 2 210. I can walk to the place where they are. League of Legends servers are hosted in Chicago, which is actually quite a ways away from you guys, and it's always a little bit confusing because we compete in Los Angeles. So it's like, why didn't you have them in Los Angeles? But anyway, I'm sure there's a good reason. I've never heard what it is. Jobs is an interesting
Where's
one.
Silicon Valley at?
What's that?
No, because like the reason it's also in LA is a huge money thing, but also because it's closer to the tech industry areas, which possibly runs better near Silicon Valley areas that need those servers.
Yeah,
But that's San Francisco, but
I would think you could just put them in LA, but yeah, they're in Chicago, so I don't know. Like the ping, I think, is a less of an issue because like I can probably solo queue on 70 ms on most games. FPS is a little bit harder. Jobs are so the secondary part of the question is, where would you say is the best place to look for esports jobs for students interested? This is my controversial take, okay? But it's how I got started in esports. And if you listen to my original kind of like upcoming story on how this worked, I understand there's going to be people in chat that are like, well, I hate it when he does this, like, or whatever. But I think you should work for free. Like, if you have the time as a student and you can offer your services to somebody and you can really work hard and demonstrate yourself, there is nothing more valuable than having that experience on the resume. If you expect to get a degree and with no experience and no connections in the esports industry and walk out of college and get a job, it is super unlikely, especially in Hawaii. But if you have spent that, like one of the things, I went to college, right? I went to college for 4 years. I studied business, and then I also actually went to college for 5 years because I got a secondary degree in psychology, got a business and psych degree. My biggest regret in going in the time that I spent in college was that I didn't pursue a lot of extracurricular skills and activities. And I kind of expected that my degree was going to carry me into my career 100%. And a degree does help for sure, but it's not going to convey to you the same level of soft to hard skills that are going to be expected of a person that is working a full-blown career when you're out of college. I wish I had learned better sales. I wish I had learned better marketing. I wish I had taken that time to read more books, to take more internships, and to do more work. So my number one advice for those students is to take those opportunities. If you get any, and like the other thing too is like, don't be too ego about it. One of the big mistakes I see a lot of students make is they're like, well, if I'm not going to be an intern at TSM or FaZe Clan, I'm like not going to do it. Like I can't be bothered. That big mistake, right? If you get an opportunity, and this is one of the reasons actually, Gus, going back to like the collegiate question, one of the reasons why I think that collegiate is such a great opportunity for esports is because it actually can lend people this kind of experience. So one of the first things you can do is get involved at your university. If there's any positions you can do at your university and those are available, you should do them. And then likewise, if you can hop skip to other universities and say, hey, I'm a student over here, but I want to learn, I want to be involved in this. Is there anything I can do remotely? Can I help organize your tournaments? Can I help like post content? Can I help like content schedule, do ideas creative, like literally anything you can put on a resume that then shows that you've had experience. And you'd be so surprised how small the world is. The world is like very small in esports, and all you need to do is like get in front of like one person who has the right connections, and they'll be able to point you, and then you get like one job and you're in forever. So I think it's really good for students to spend their time, as tempting as it is, like and what I did was I literally just like played StarCraft and like hung out like my entire college career. But if I could have done it differently, I would have learned more hard and soft skills, because it set me back. Like a lot of people don't know that like I really started picking up in my career in my 30s. And the reason that happened is, and I didn't do that earlier, is because I didn't take those opportunities in college.
Okay. So just don't try to get signed major label. Just drop your mixtape for free first before you get up there.
Yeah, and hopefully, there's a lot of controversy with like, this person is not paying me money, but if they are paying you in mentorship and they legitimately have done the thing that like we talked about sales, like if you find a sales guy that's crushing it, making like $500,000 to $1 million a year in commissions, and is willing to teach you that, like, go listen to him, right? One of the number one things I did like for my investing career was this is like a simple story, but I think it like kind of carries the point home. I used to work at a Starbucks, and that was like one of my first jobs. And there would be a guy that came in every day, and he would be there at like dead dawn when the market opens, 6 a.m. And he would go on his laptop and he would watch stocks. And I would like listen to him at the table, like sometimes when I'm serving drinks and stuff like that. And I found out that he's actually he was a professor at one point at Golden Gate University, and he taught a method of investing called the Wyckoff method, and was quite connected. He was really good, super wealthy dude. So I went home and then I wrote out like a plan, and I was like, hey, if you could meet with me once a month and just tell me some of the top things that you've learned and that you could convey to somebody, I'll do any homework you want. I'll do anything you want. I'll do all the boring stuff. And I just sat down with them and said, hey, I made you this. Like, I know you don't know me, but I've seen you around. I know you work here and didn't want to disturb you. But if this is interesting to you, like, I would really appreciate if this could happen. If not, totally cool also. I'll never bother you again. And he instantly was like, come back next week. Like, be here at 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And like, that's your first class. You'd be so surprised how many mentors are waiting for hungry people to talk. Now, like, when people hear that, they're like, oh, I should reach out to Devin Nash. I should reach out to like XYZ person. I should reach out to like Doublelift to learn how to pro play. They think that. I should reach out to Michael Phelps to learn swimming. And what the mistake there is, like, I get 25 to 30 inbounds a day from people that are asking for stuff like that. And I'm a nobody, right? Like, much less like somebody like Doublelift or somebody that's like a really famous streamer like Tyler One or somebody like that is getting like hundreds of those a day. He doesn't read a single one of them. But how many expert salespeople, how many esports people ran a team 5 years ago? How many people are X Complexity or X TSM or whatever that have a ton of experience that never gets emails and have forgotten more about esports than you would ever know, that you could send a single email to and they never get one and they would teach you? Just with a little bit more research and thinking around it, you can get those people. I got lucky enough that one of those people was put in front of me that didn't get a lot of emails. He was an ex-professor, but he knew all the stuff, and I learned all my investing from him. That stuff has since made, like, I've basically ripped 12 to 15% per year, every year, ever since that time, and that was a huge part of what made me independently wealthy. It was just like just that once a week with that dude, learning like that it's way more important to cover your losses on the stock market, for example, than it is to win, because you have to make double your money back to get to where you were before, stuff like that, right? And I think if all of you start thinking carefully about those opportunities, those people are out there to teach you, but you have to be smart about and creative about how you find them and contact them. But there's hundreds of those people, how many players are no longer in the LCS that get like 20 viewers on a stream that would love to teach you the game. Like, and they're challenger, like they're way better than anybody, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that inspires me, for sure.
Awesome. Do we have any last couple questions, and then we'll let you go? I appreciate your time though.
Oh, dude, I hope it's been good.
No, it's been awesome.
Okay, good.
yeah, no, it's been
a long time
really,
since I gave a talk.
Good,
yeah,
insightful information for sure. I think it's good just for like general college understanding too, and like growing up and getting a job. I agree with all of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise,
all right. Would a feeder system help for the esports? And also, could you imagine if the NCAA got involved in more esports, like on like a major, like, you know, like the Division I, like, because they're focused mostly on football. Like SEC generates like almost billions type of thing.
Yes. Yeah, the NCAA scares me because nobody would get paid. But
yeah.
but beyond that, yes, that kind of feeder system would be a really good idea. But esports doesn't need players as much as it needs viewers. The real solution that you've got to get to is how do you get people to watch this? And that's like the hidden thing that Collegiate hasn't figured out yet, and I don't know the answer to.
Like personalities
we
as
should...
one of them?
What's that? Sorry? What are we doing?
Jacob, did you have something to say?
Yeah.
I was thinking like, you know, personalities as, you know, to get the views up or something like that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we should make more esports events scripted just to get people to watch it.
Unironically, like if you focus on storylines and make this stuff interesting. If you get 10,000 people to show up to a live stream, then I promise the players will show up. I promise that like everything else will fall into place. Everything starts with attention. And the whole reason why esports is where it was thought to go the direction that it was going to go was because people thought that the attention was going to be stadiums full of people, was going to be tens of thousands of people watching. Like Bobby Kotick unironically sat us in a room and was like, every single stadium you see is going to be full every weekend of people that bought tickets and bought concessions. Like, your problems are over. The declining viewership off of basketball and NFL is over. This is going to fill stadiums in 4 years. And like the team owners were sitting there like, but the investors, like the NFL people, like the Jerry Joneses, like those people were just like, oh my God, this is it. This is my solution, right? So it's like, it's literally like everybody thought if you build it, they will come, but that is not true. It's like you've got to have
the spectacle.
You've got to have a storyline, and you've got to have something that entices viewers. And if Collegiate can figure out that problem, and I do think it's a problem you can figure out, then everything else will fall into place.
The first one was just a spectacle to see if they can fill arenas with just nerds on computers. The second time showed that no one wants to see nerds on computers that long.
Yeah, it ended up that neither of them ended up being true. But again, it's just because like the if you take away one thing from that, what's missing is the storylines. We just bypassed why people should care. And so like what ended up happening was like, who wants to watch TSM versus CLG for the 30th time when these players are imported from Korea, barely speak English, they're good at the game, but like they don't have any like attachment to the North American crowd that can like tell them why you should care, because no content's being made about them. Think about what a storyline Faker has behind him which is for people that don't know, is the best League of Legends player in the world, widely considered to be. He's had millions of dollars of advertising and storyline put behind him by SKT1, which is owned by the T1 Telecom, which is a major company within Korea, and so like this story was made successfully for that player. If we had that kind of development for these players, we would have got the viewership, but nobody thought to do it. That's still a problem you can solve for Collegiate. Like you can still make people care, like the NCAA did, and like they've managed to do for Collegiate. I know it's possible. I'm waiting for
UFC does something like that where it's video packages.
UFC does an amazing job of storytelling. Look at Israel Adesanya and yes, they're so good at it. They tell such good stories. That's a perfect example, right? Like they're masters of storytelling. They get you to care about these fighters on such a high level, and that's 100% what needs to happen in esports. That is such a perfect analogy you just made. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm waiting for the Jesus of storylines for esports to come along, and maybe it's one of you. You know, but it just someone has to do it.
Someone has to be the Cody Rhodes and finish the story somehow.
Someone has to do it for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I think that's all the time. Appreciate it, Devin.
Great, cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nothing else. I'm just really grateful to be here, and like, actually, there is one thing.
Go for it.
If there is, can I tell like a really quick story?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I had one class in college that was actually super freaking difficult. Okay. It was called corporate finance. All right. And it was a nightmare of a course. It was one of those ones that was graded on like a huge curve where like if you didn't get like an A and a B, you just were like, you had an F and you're just screwed. The first day that I was in that class, a guy pulled up his laptop. The teacher slammed the laptop and was like, notes only, like you're only writing here, no distractions, no phones, nothing. It was just a hell of a course. The dude ended up he was like a multi-franchise owner of like, he owned like 30 Quiznos or something, super successful business guy, had no business teaching like this class. Like he was there. Anyway, he said something I'll never forget to my whole college course. I want to impart upon you here today. He said to me, every single class you take and every single day you spend in college, I'm wondering one thing. The teacher is wondering one thing. When is the day that you're actually going to switch the on switch? When's the day that you're actually going to turn it on and actually show your potential to the world and everything that you can do? And I thought so much about that. He said, because at this moment in time, there are people in Ivy League schools, in Harvard, in Stanford, in Berkeley, that are clicking that switch. The moment that you click that switch and you turn it on, that is the moment that your life will change and you can never go back. And I pray for all of you that you turn that switch on and you think about that story the day that you're going to actually turn it on and unlock your full potential, because I want that for every single person here.